Our show's what you know. We'll always watch TV. And if you think we can't, we'll watch more and you'll see. That's why the people of the web believe in Jim from Las Vegas and Jakob from Sweden.
Shows What You Know, your television podcast. I'm Jim from Las Vegas, and with me as always is...
Jakob from Sweden. Welcome back. We're doing voices this time around. Yeah, welcome back to episode 4 of our podcast that's been going on for 8 years. Try to keep up. We've done a reboot, not a rebrand, but, you know, just kind of shaking the cobwebs off this old thing and kicked it back into gear in 2024. How you doing, Jim?
I'm doing great. We do a show. We love TV. And we're in prime position right now because everything I'm seeing in the headlines, there's that movie theaters are dying because TV's destroying it. So we're on the winning team, baby. So we're going to discuss some TV news. We're going to talk about what we've been watching. We might even get into a little bit more than that. So just stay tuned, ladies and germs.
Yeah. All you movie podcasts can go fuck yourselves. This is a TV only podcast.
I think we're gonna really get into, I mean, not just this episode, but in general, is the blurred lines of what is now constitutes TV. What constitutes TV versus a film versus streaming versus I don't know, a YouTube video or a podcast. Who knows these days? But before we get into any of that, Jakob, we're a day early and $1 extra in our pocket for the brand new Disney Plus Star Wars streaming show. The Acolyte premieres a little over 24 hours from right now as of recording. Jakob, where are you at on Star Wars in general? You a big Star Wars guy? Is it just a thing that exists in the world to you? Tell me about it.
I mean, it's kind of become a thing that exists in the world to me, as it has to most of us, I think. But as far as, I mean, look, again, I was just saying fuck you to all the movie people, so I won't get into the movies too much, right? But we all know the sequels that they made didn't work out great, and I will just leave it at that for now. But as far as TV, I watched the first season of Mandalorian, and then I completely checked out. And then I never watched the Book of Boba Fett. I never watched Obi-Wan Kenobi. I never watched Ashoka. And I did watch Andor, and I was like, this is good. This is pretty good. Because everyone told me it was going to be good. And I was like, all right. And they were right. But I never heard anyone say, you have to watch the Book of Boba Fett. So I didn't.
Yeah, no, you did yourself a service, my friend. I mean, did you only watch the first season of The Mandalorian or just the first episode? How much of The Mandalorian did you watch?
I believe I watched the first season and like episode 1 of season 2. I could be mistaken, but that's, you know, because that was 5+ years ago at this stage. So, but it was something like that. Did you watch all the way through? You know, sometimes clips surface on Twitter or whatever, and it's got like, you know, Jack Black and Lizzo as some galactic leaders or whatever, and you're like, what the fuck happened to this show? Have you been keeping up with The Mandalorian all these years?
I have. I've watched all the episodes of The Mandalorian, and then the much maligned season 3. Maybe not much maligned. I guess maybe in my circle. Who knows? It's hard to gauge because when you're on the internet, you either stumble into like everything Star Wars does is amazing, like corner, which isn't as big, but it's out there. And then the everything Star Wars does is the worst corner. When I didn't watch The Mandalorian season 3 week to week. I watched it. I binged it on a plane ride, like the creators intended.
Yeah, I was thinking that.
And I quite enjoyed it actually when I was able to watch it in that setting or in that fashion. I don't really, but now that I think about it, it's like not like I remember any of it either. I do remember Jack Black and Lizzo. I do remember the Book of Boba Fett was very underwhelming to bad. Obi-Wan Kenobi, what to me was very bad. I did not watch Ahsoka because I'm not well versed in the Clone Wars animated or Star Wars Rebels. I've watched a little bit of Rebels. So I haven't checked out that show. And Andor, I was late to because I kind of really liked the first few episodes.
Mm-hmm.
And then for whatever reason, I think I just started watching a lot of Survivor, and it was also kind of like I wanted to cherish it a little bit. So I didn't finish it until fairly recently, and I loved
A
it.
tale as old
so
as
good.
time from Jim. I watched the first. If my tale as old as time is like, oh yeah, I watched it, and I actually only watched 2 episodes. Your tale as old as time is you watched 2 episodes, then you went off and watched The Challenge for 4 years.
Yeah, exactly. But I loved it. Andor was so good, and I'm a big Rogue One hater. I'm an infamous Star Wars Rogue One hater. A lot of people love Star Wars Rogue One. I did not like it, but Andor was amazing. Mwah, chef's kiss. So now this new show is The Acolyte. This is back in the 100,000 years ago, something like not 100,000 or 100 or 1,000 years ago, a High Republic era. There we go. So we're going. This is supposed to be like the birth of the Sith or something along those lines. We're going, or the birth of, maybe not the birth of the dark side, but like, yeah, a lot of lightsabers. And I'm not to be that guy. I mean, I didn't even realize this. I'm wearing like a Star Wars shirt right now with Millennium Falcon on it. Not to be that guy, but like, I don't want lightsabers in my Star Wars anymore. That's why I like Andor so much. Yeah. So basing it just off this trailer, I'm not that excited. But
the Acolyte, I feel like it's got a bit of buzz around it, no? Or is it just the average amount of buzz? Because I do think it's interesting that they're telling a story that's so removed from the main movies and most of the TV shows that maybe, hopefully, they can have some interesting characters and plots.
Yes, no, absolutely. Because the buzz is actually pretty good, at least from what I've been seeing. It's always tough to gauge that because these are people that have been like invited to a movie theater premiere to go see something. And I imagine if I went to a big gala event, I'd be like, this is amazing. Like just the experience in general. And then you come out like loving it. But you're right. It's more removed. Some people are like, you don't even need to know Star Wars to watch this. I'm like, I don't know if I go that far based off the trailer. I mean, I feel like you'd have to at least know a little bit about the Force and lightsabers and shit. Although I suppose just in general, people have an understanding of that even without seeing Star Wars movies. And I mean, Carrie-Anne Moss is in it, which is exciting to me. I mean, as a big original Matrix fan, that's kind of cool to see her being able to kick some ass with a goddamn lightsaber. There's one thing, to be that guy, to be that standard Star Wars, like, nitpick piece of shit that I can be. There's a thing in the trailer where there's a lightsaber whip, and I was like, uh-oh. But then people are like, oh, actually, that was in the books, so there's precedent and canon for that. But I'm like, it still looks kind of stupid to me. But anyways, we haven't seen it yet. By the time you hear this, it's probably been out, so we can't get too much in the weeds on that. I just wanted to gauge your general, not just, I mean, I guess mostly Star Wars, but Disney Plus in general. How is that on an international scale? In Ireland, is it people are like, you got your Netflix and you got your Disney Plus? Like, where is it in the streaming hierarchy, at least in your circle or your neck of the woods?
I don't think it's that high up there, but again, like maybe I don't. I maybe we should find some numbers. Maybe next week we'll do an actual comparison or whatever. But I don't think Disney Plus is doing amazing around here. I feel like I see ads for it a lot more than I see anyone ever talking about the shows that are on there. You know,
that makes sense. So like. We were looking at the list of Star Wars shows. Well, one other thing I did want to note is the next show coming out, I'm actually super excited for, Star Wars Skeleton Crew, because that's described more as kind of like a Goonies in the Star Wars universe. I guess probably maybe cashing in off the old like Stranger Things type deal. But I'm just a sucker for that idea in general. I mean, there was like a bootleg trailer that leaked from like they played a trailer at like one of the Star Wars celebrations and someone filmed it with their phone. So I saw a little piece of it from there, and it has, I believe, Jude Law's in it, and it's something to do with 4 kids gonna go on a space adventure in Star Wars. Now, to me, that's what I'm super amped and excited for. That's supposed to be the next show after this current one.
Yeah.
But we looked at the Star Wars shows. We kind of broke all those down. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, we talked the other day about how superhero movies, as we all, with the other episode, about how superhero movies had to kind of start doing other genres, right? Like, because basically Star Wars in itself was kind of a plot, a plot convention. Like, you kind of knew what you would get in a Star Wars story. And then, The Mandalorian was like, let's dial up the Western aspect or whatever. And then these different shows are hopefully trying to do different things that are interesting enough. This sounds like it's kind of a step in that direction, right? Telling a different type of story in the Star Wars universe, which I feel like is something we've been promised for maybe decades or at this stage, or at least one decade, right? And I haven't really seen that to any impressive degree besides maybe Andor, which is, tonally a very different story from some of the other ones we've seen, even if like some of the content is the same. So I was just reading here, Skeleton Crew, which we don't have a release date for yet, as far as I know, is supposed to tell a coming of age story of 4 children making a discovery on their home planet and getting lost in a galaxy and going on an adventure to get back home. That sounds like it's got to be different just by virtue of what it is.
It sounds so cool. I mean, I don't know if it's just like catnip for me or something, but even just hearing the description, I'm super amped. I'm excited for that. And it's like, again, not to be that Star Wars piece of shit, but like there hasn't been a lot of Star Wars that I get that excited for, as I wear my stupid Star Wars shirt like the idiot that I am.
Yes.
But I'm kind of interested just in general. I mean, I know Disney Plus has been out for a while, but like looking at what kind of success does Disney Plus have as far as at least original programming is concerned? And I'm skimming through just all of their shows. I mean, obviously, they had a lot of Marvel shows in addition to Star Wars shows. You watched WandaVision, right?
Yeah. Well,
and
that was the year that Disney Plus came out, I believe. And like, I think we got like, let's get it for a year. There was some deal. And then it was like, oh, the prices are going up. And you're like, no, I don't think they are. I never looked back to it ever again.
But I think most people agree that was a pretty successful, like, outside of just being one of their first big original programmings, people kind of generally liked it. I thought it kind of ended in a whimper. But overall, I think people agree that was pretty good. I mean, did you watch any of these other Marvel shows? I know we watched Loki we discussed Loki. But like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, Hawkeye, Moon Knight.
I did watch Moon Knight for some reason. Yeah. Don't know why. Do you have a full list there? So yeah,
I am looking at a list. Well, these are what's listed under drama for their original programming. Of course, Mandalorian, as we mentioned, The Right Stuff, which I don't know anything about. American Historical Drama Limited Television Series, loosely based on the 1979 book of the same name by Tom Wolfe. Third installment of titular franchise. I mean, it's like astronauts, right?
Oh, wow. Sounds like something I would watch if I had Disney Plus.
It's a gritty, anti-nostalgic look at what would become America's first reality show as the obsessive original Mercury 7 astronauts and their families become instant celebrities in a competition that will either kill them or make them immortal. 1 hour per episode drama will follow the protagonists from the Mojave Desert to the edges of space, with future seasons carrying through the humankind's greatest achievement of the moon landing. I don't think it got past the future seasons.
No, Jim, why are we even talking about this? This show is canceled in 2021. Yeah. Like, we're in the news section, Jim. Come on, get it together here. So your point being, there's a lot of stuff on the drama tab of Disney's. Like, what's your take on Disney Plus? What's the American angle on this?
Looking at it here, it's kind of a failure. But then again, I mean, I'm kind of morphing news into like what makes a successful streaming network. Like Netflix is obviously considered as like, daddy streaming over here, like daddy of the pack. But then again, most of the stuff they put out, we always agree is not very good. Because these other shows I'm looking at, we got a National Treasure show no one watched. There was a Percy Jackson show. Didn't you watch that? Or you were looking into that?
Didn't finish it. Didn't finish it. It was not great. It was just slightly better than the movie, I guess. But I don't know why I kept consuming Percy Jackson content. I never liked any of it. I think I read the book, didn't like it. Watched the movie, didn't like that. Watched the show, didn't like that either. So yeah.
Well, and then I mean, we got some of their comedies. We got a Turner and Hooch show that ended. Doogie Howser reboot that went nowhere. Muppets show they tried, which didn't get picked up. Goosebumps is going on right now. But yeah, nothing's really jumping out. We won't get too into the weeds. Maybe we'll have to discuss this more at length in a further episode. But like, yeah, what is it? Is it new programming, or is it just the existing stuff we like to rewatch? That is the sign of a successful streaming network. Something to think over.
Yeah, to my understanding, like something like a Friends or The Office is like, yeah, most people just sign on and watch that and keep the subscription because it's on there, right? So different recipes for different streaming services for sure. Like I use Prime and Apple TV Plus on occasion, and they're so different. Like Prime will just have whatever random shit, but that's a positive, right? So if you want some random shit, you go there and scroll around, like, oh, here's a movie from 1998 or whatever. Some comedy I'd forgotten existed. Let's watch that. Oh, it's gone next week, because they're always reshuffling the deck and just buying rights and throwing things out and throwing things in. And that's good, because that's kind of like flipping through the channels versus Apple TV that I feel like has fewer shows, but they're usually produced kind of for Apple TV, and a lot of them have a lot more creative integrity to them. So, but also you're like, I don't always want to watch, the fucking Franklin show about Benjamin Franklin in France. Maybe I want to watch the 98 comedy, and they don't have that at all. So yeah. It's a real different balance from the different shows or streamers for sure. And
one other quick kind of footnote on this discussion, and I think maybe why I've been thinking about it, is because there's a thing going on social media right now where everyone, or like news sites are reporting like, hey, Lost is coming to Netflix in July or sometime in June or something like that. And some people are getting amped up. Yeah. And I mean, I don't think you guys have Hulu like we have Hulu. I think Disney Plus and Hulu are like the same thing. But right. other people are pointing out like, bro, Lost has been on Hulu for years. So why are we oh my God, it's coming to Netflix. Are we going to see maybe we're going to see a resurgence in Lost just because it's on Netflix? And I guess that's a sign that Netflix is daddy of all streaming services.
Netflix is daddy, and it is. There was some other show that actually I forget the details, but some discussion of like a show that was gonna potentially move to Netflix, and the prediction being it might lead to a significant increase in views, in the same way that pretty much happened for Cobra Kai, because it was on Cobra Kai was on. It was a YouTube original show. Netflix kind of came in and bought it / came on as a co-producer of the show, and then it became massively successful. And that's kind of the Netflix effect. They don't need a big billboard advertising the show. They can just put it on the front page and of Netflix and like make or break a show that way if they want to. But arguably they've been resting on those laurels for a while, and that's why they probably need to buy in external shows, because they're not making a lot of great shows necessarily.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what's going on in the news, Jacob? Tell me something.
Well, first of all, come back next week and we'll talk actually about The Acolyte, because we can both check out the first couple episodes. We'll give you, and if you haven't watched it, we'll give you our spoiler-free opinions next week on whether it's worth actually getting into this show or not, because I need someone to tell me. And normally I would wait for people like with Andor to say, Jacob, it's good, you should check it out. But this time, I'm doing the grunt work. I'm going down in the weeds, so we'll let you know next week whether you should check out The Acolyte.
Absolutely.
So far as other news, I mean, I feel like every week I'm seeing news of some new prequel series, and to be fair, a lot of them are like in development, so who knows if we'll actually see them come to pass. But breaking this week from Variety, there's a 300 TV series in early development at Warner Brothers. So there's not a lot of detail here. Deals are being negotiated. It seems like, definitely leaked information, not a press release, but Zack Snyder is apparently in talks to direct and executive produce the series. 300, the 300 warriors of Thermopylae. We need that show, don't we? We need a prequel show about that, right, Jim? What's your immediate reaction?
I mean, the immediate reaction is just an eye roll. Like, I guess. I mean, didn't they already tried a sequel film, didn't they? And I don't think that panned out that well.
301? Yeah, no.
Yeah, yeah, something like that. 600, 900, 1,000. I mean, I hate to, even though I'm very cynical when it comes to media, I hate to immediately write something off because I've been surprised. Because on the surface, I'm very cynical, but then internally with a lot of these things, I'll always give them a chance, and I'm always hoping it's going to be good. But it's just so hard to see something like this. And I mean, yeah, it's been almost 20 years since the original movie. And yeah, I mean, when the original movie came out, it blew everyone's minds. It was stylized and cool and like, I mean, epic. And I think at the time, like, sold a lot of DVDs or Blu-rays or something. Like, I think it made Blu-ray like a big deal. I remember because I worked in retail at the time. So it's hard to not see this as just scraping the bottom of the barrel of like, what do we got? What else do we got? And I also, on the other hand, I guess I kind of get why they have to do this because people don't really tune into other things anyways that are like, I guess, quote, original in some cases. So you need to have some sort of in to at least have people put some eyes on it. What do you think?
I think everything you said makes a lot of sense. At least 300 is something where it was the style that made it good, which means you can take that style and apply it to something else. But as is proven by the fact that neither of us are really familiar with 300 Rise of an Empire that came out in 2014. That was the sequel, which was based on another of Miller's graphic novels. And it had Snyder co-writing the screenplay but not directing. So like, we haven't heard about that, right? So clearly it's not like a given that it's going to be successful just because they grab the style or even a similar plot. So it's kind of like the Star Wars thing where you have to add something else to it. If you tell a very different, you have to tell a different story first of all because it's in the TV format. The fact that it's a prequel is not necessarily promising, but hopefully it's the type of prequel where it's removed from the story and they can just do their own thing. All those Spartans, they kind of blend together a little bit anyway, right? So maybe like the plot isn't that important to 300. Arguably, it's more about the style and the presentation. So I don't know. It's kind of similar to, I guess they're making a prequel to Legally Blonde and making that a TV show. That's like slightly older news, but that sounds like such a bad idea that you're like, I hope they're thinking something original here, because if they're not, it's going to go to shit. It's kind of like the Barbie movie. You're like, why would they make a Barbie movie? But like, if they take an extra step and actually try to do something inventive and funny and clever with it, yeah, I guess it's a long-winded way of saying that I agree with you. I always try to, hope for the best in that way.
Well, and just prequels in general, immediately, just hearing that something's a prequel almost immediately shuts my brain down. I don't care at all about prequels because basically by design, you're going to be stuck with a lot of nonsense of like, and I know everyone loves Better Call Saul, and I also love it to a degree, but I always think of the zoom out of Los Polos Locos or whatever, and it's like this big reveal, like they're at the place. Yeah, I know they are.
It's a very specific moment, but I know the exact moment you mean from Better Call Saul.
I mean, I recently did watch. I mean, this is a film, but I watched The First Omen this past week, and I was surprised at how good it was. Outside of the stupid prequel parts of it where they're like, that young boy will one day be, and they say a name. I don't want to spoil anything, but if you know anything about The Omen, I'm pretty sure you know where they're going with it. But when they have to drop a character's name or they have to reference an event or show, I mean, even like, it's so weird looking at something like Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, which the beginning of it has young Indiana Jones and it has all the classic prequel things, but it's in the span of like a 10-minute action intro where like we have to see how Indiana Jones like got his little scar and kind of where he meets a guy that wears the hat and the jacket that he's later wearing, and the first time he uses a whip, like all these things that no one cares about, but which is fine in a 5-minute setup of a new film. But when you're doing these 2-hour, or I guess in this case, probably like an 8-episode thing about how did he get his abs to fight in the big battle of 300? I mean, I don't know. I guess it's more so the prequel idea than it is the using the IP.
Yeah. Well, when you said you watched The First Omen, I did think you meant you watched the First Omen film.
Oh, no.
I didn't realize there's a prequel called The First Omen,
Yep.
which is a prequel to the 1976 film The Omen.
Yep.
So I was confused there for a second, but yeah, what you're saying makes sense, Jim. But, that's just the world we live in. Everything's a prequel, and it has been for a long time. So that's kind of, I do have to say, I enjoy more when someone uses an IP and they do kind of a soft reboot or something like that. Mr. and Mrs. Smith on Amazon Prime was actually quite good. It's, taking the themes, but doing something completely different with it. That's fun. I'd like to see more of that if we have to keep churning out stuff related to content we already know. And kind of the Ghostbusters films that have come out recently are sequels, right? But they're also like kind of reboots in a sense because it's a new crew doing similar things. Like it's kind of like doing the kids go on an adventure feeling, and then they discover little glimpses of the past. That's a fun way of playing with an IP. But yeah, if this 300 prequel does happen and the first episode is Leonidas and he's like scrawny like Steve Rogers at the first 10 minutes of Captain America, I think we're all going to be like, well, fuck this.
And I mean, on the flip side then, to being like pretty ho-hum on a prequel announcement, a sequel series of City of God coming to HBO Max, which initially, we were talking a little bit about this before we started recording. When I saw this headline, I thought this was just an announcement, but it looks like it's coming to Max in August. So it is something that has been shot and is done. For people that don't know, City of God is a 2002? Yeah, 2002 film. It's, I mean, at least to my young cinephile mind, I think I lived in Massachusetts at the time in the suburbs. My cousin and I, we took the train into the city because we had to go to the Art House Theater to go see this in the theaters. And it was basically like a Brazilian Goodfellas in a lot of respects to me, like the style and the direction. And I believe a lot of the cast were just people that lived in these favelas in Rio de Janeiro. So just how gritty and raw it was, and just such an impactful film. I'm not sure if it's a movie people talk about a lot still, which I guess like the flip side of it to me, because it doesn't come off as like an IP, like similar to like the 300 prequel is, although it kind of is. But if anything, even if it's kind of bad, at least if this leads people to find the movie City of God that maybe didn't see it, it's a W in my book. I guess this is more about like rooting for the little guy than it is like, 300, a huge movie that everyone knew of. So, because it's weird, I almost feel like a hypocrite being like, hell yeah, 22-year-old film they're doing a series sequel to. Let's go.
Yeah, I think I watched it maybe like in film school. It's kind of one they have you watch, and for good reason. It's a very good film, but definitely it's one where not like 300 you're like, oh, they're making more of 300. It's more like, huh? What? They're making they're making a show? I guess now just cursory like search on it, I found out 2 interesting facts about this, which is that there actually was a City of God TV show that aired on Brazilian TV called City of Men, or that, but in Portuguese, I guess. So there was a show created by the showrunner, and it ran for years on Brazilian TV, and then that even got turned into a movie, I guess, like a made-for-TV type movie. So given that the news is that this is going to, as far as I understand, it's going to actually be about the same types of characters, it'll be interesting I mean, I won't know because I didn't watch the Brazilian TV show, but I would wonder if they actually take like basically if it's an adaptation of that or any similarities where they're bringing things over from a version of the story already told. The other interesting thing I found out is that the director of City of God was also directing your TV show Sugar that you were watching. He was one of the main directors on that show.
I did not realize that. That's actually that's some fun information to know. And by the way, quick update on that. I haven't finished Sugar yet, but I did get to the twist.
Okay.
I'll just say that. I got to the twist. It might even have been something that we had mentioned in our discussion if you go back.
Okay, so he's got a fucking Apple Vision Pro on. We'll make a spoiler section on it at some stage, I'm sure. He directed some of the main episodes there. But yeah, definitely an interesting one. And a weird one.
Yeah. Looking at it here, it's supposed to pick up 2 decades after the events of the original film. Picking up the story of photographer Buscape, who, what was his name in the movie, though? He had like a nickname. Rocket, yeah. So it is a lot of the same actors are back as well. And I mean, I guess that makes sense because now that you mention it, I do vaguely remember hearing that there was I don't think I knew that they did a TV show, but I remember hearing about a movie, and that must have been like the made-for-TV movie they did. So yeah, this sounds awesome. So I'm excited for that, and it's given me the itch to rewatch City of God because I haven't seen it in at least 5 years, probably longer. So yeah. I'm probably gonna fire that up soon, and maybe see what I can find on the show that they've worked on already that was on Brazilian TV.
Yeah, just from reading on it, it was like, oh, it's a more lighthearted and less violent version. I'm like, that kind of feels like kind of the part of the core of what made the film interesting. But sure, at least it's a show coming out fairly soon, so we will actually be discussing it here on this podcast most likely, which is nice. But you know what's not coming out anytime soon? The Dungeons and Dragons live action series reported this week in Deadline. The live action series is not going forward at Paramount Plus, will be revamped and shopped around by Hasbro. So Hasbro owns Dungeons and Dragons. It was actually sold to Paramount. Paramount ordered it was a full 8-episode straight to series order that they placed back in January of 2023. And you'd think that meant they were making it and releasing it, but turns out Paramount is now opting not to go ahead.
So this, because that had to have been before what was the name of the movie that came out?
Yeah.
Den of Thieves? Was it Den of Thieves?
Honor Amongst Thieves. Yes, it came out last year. It's actually, I really enjoyed that film. I'm hoping it finds its audience. It's one of those, I went to see it in the cinema, and one of the times I went to see it in the cinema, it was completely empty besides me and my partner, and I was like, oh dear, because when I first saw it, and there were a few more people there, I watched it twice, it was like, oh, this was so fun and so cool, and I hope it's clearly them doing like Marvel. It's kind of like fun action adventure in the world of Dungeons and Dragons, and there's so much to tap there in terms of lore and stories, and you know, even fucking things like Vecna of Stranger Things fame. Vecna is a character from Dungeons and Dragons. You know, this is there's so much you could take out of this that it was like, I hope this is the start of something. And the film did not perform well at the box office. And yes, the order was in January, right? They ordered the series to be made. A few months later, or shortly thereafter, the film comes out, is not a massive hit. And now we hear that they're kind of like, never mind. Let's not do that. So not super promising.
I mean, I did see the film. I liked it a lot. I do want to watch it again as well. And I'm very much an outsider as far as Dungeons and Dragons in general. I've never played or anything like that, so I have a general understanding of it. But I thought the movie was super fun and inventive, and it felt fresh. It does feel like, at least from what I see online, people are discovering that, and it's like building up more of a fan base. So I almost kind of half expected them to lean into it more because it feels like that movie's getting more buzz, but I'm sure to them, they're like, we just got to cut our losses. Like, we're not going to pursue this, which is kind of a shame, because the movie was cool. The movie was well done.
Yeah.
So now Hasbro, I feel like they're pushing a ton of stuff because there's a thing. I think they actually did announce that they're doing like a GI Joe Transformers movie. So they're in good company. Dungeons and Dragons is in good company, Jacob. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I mean they're not short of cash, right? As a corporation, and will no doubt continue to push this in some fashion. Now, it does say that they are going to do some creative updates before bringing this out to other potential buyers. A new creative team. That's all that's mentioned so far. Sounds ominous. Now, the folks who were working on this previously were Rolson Marshall Thurber, who I wasn't that familiar with, but he's the director of Red Notice, as well as We're the Millers. I did like We're the Millers quite a bit. He also, I thought this was a fun fact, he acted in the Dodgeball movie, and his credit was obnoxious Las Vegas homophobe, which I think is almost as good as Jim from Las Vegas as a kind of byline. And apparently Drew Crivello is an executive producer and came on as to showrun this show. I guess he created the show We Crashed, the WeWork drama show. I don't see how that goes with this exactly, but he was also vice president of film production at Fox, working on films like Deadpool and X-Men First Class. So apparently they didn't come up with anything enticing enough for Paramount Plus to go ahead, and they're shaking up the creative team, moving on and trying to sell this thing somewhere else. And I, for one, hope that they manage to do so, and that the show they eventually make isn't terrible, because I'm a big fan of tabletop role-playing games, and I think it's unlike, we've talked a lot about video game adaptations recently. I feel like adapting a tabletop role-playing game has so much potential in so many different ways, because it's basically like every game is a vibe. Like Dungeons and Dragons is a vibe, and all the other games that exist are different vibes that you can tell different stories in. There's a bunch of lore. There's a bunch of potential stories to get into. So, hopefully something will come out of that.
Yeah, because I believe John Francis Daley co-wrote the movie. That's Sam Weir from Freaks and Geeks. And any of the stuff he's written, I've liked. So I wish he was a part of the show as well. But, because it does feel like it's a natural, between, like you mentioned, Stranger Things has kind of really made D&D kind of hot. Just in general with, like, Game of Thrones and even, like, that Lord of the Rings show. Kind of that style of like epic shows are kind of hot right now, and it feels like this is a good way to do more of like a family-friendly, fun version without being like weird, heavy. I guess not that Lord of the Rings one isn't that heavy, but it also is kind of more serious. But then again, maybe you want the dark and brooding Dungeons and Dragons movie. Is that the movie that or TV show? Is that the one you want? More of the dead serious, gritty, realistic Dungeons and Dragons show?
Now, Jim, now that we're talking about this, I'm not sure we'll get on to any other topics for the rest of the episode. But so you said, Game of Thrones and Stranger Things has brought Dungeons and Dragons to prominence. I would argue that actual play podcasts and content has actually been the real driving force behind tabletop role-playing games coming into the fore in the last few years.
Now,
Critical
should I
Role,
hit the sounder?
You know what? Why don't you hit the sounder?
All right. Because I think I got it on the pad now.
Okay, great.
Oh, wait. I was testing
what do you
it.
gotta know?
What TV shows have you been watching? Tell me, I gotta know.
So, Jim, I'm a big old honking nerd, as you may know. I like all my tabletop role-playing games and whatnots. And I did always, for years, consume people playing tabletop role-playing games in an audio format. So, basically, even when I was a teenager and I was playing these games, making up stories with my friend, at one stage I had a tape recorder and I recorded some of our sessions, in part like to make notes and remember what we'd said and what was happening in these complicated campaigns and stories we were weaving for no one's entertainment but ourselves. But also because I felt like we were making something that was interesting and fun, and I wanted to capture it in the same way that, your podcast, Jim and Them, is hanging out and making jokes, and you're like, these jokes, hey, wait, I'm actually funny. And you're right. Those jokes need to be captured and transferred to other people. So actual play podcast is a phenomenon that's come out, or come out. It's really been growing over the past decade. So that's the term for when people are sitting down to play one of these games and they record it and release it in one form or another. Now, these have always existed in a visual format. People stream these things on Twitch, right? And probably the most successful one that people would have heard of is Critical Role. Now, the Critical Role show is a streaming show where they do this. It's actually been turned into an animated show. Like, literally, the story of their campaign has been transformed into an animated show because it's so popular, insanely successful Kickstarters and whatnot to get these things going. Some of the most successful Patreons on Patreon are actual play shows because the fan bases that develop around these communities are incredibly engaged and active. But for me, I was never into the visual side of things. I like the audio-based podcast. I like the Adventure Zone. I like Not Another DMD podcast. Dungeons and Daddies, Spout Lore, Rude Tales of Magic. I've listened to all of these shows. They all have different takes on how to tell a fun, interesting story in this format. But most of them are to answer your question about like the vibe, I would say Critical Role is a little bit more serious. It's kind of more of a dramatic angle. All of the ones I just mentioned, as you might be able to tell from some of the names being like Dungeons and Daddies, more comedic in tone. But what will often happen is, they do 100 episodes of a campaign or whatever. They're just making jokes and goofs and going along. And then all of a sudden, you're emotionally punched in the gut because of where the story's going. And that's the fucking magic of playing tabletop role-playing games as well, because you sit down and you're just making fun jokes with your friends, imagining you're an elf and you're like, haha, I punch him. And then all of a sudden, you're like, my daughter has been kidnapped or whatever the fuck. Like, the emotional stakes just come out of nowhere and hit you. And that's what makes the format interesting, I think. So anyway, all of that is working my way up to what I've been watching this week. But do you have any questions so far? Because I feel like I ranted at you for a while.
Well, quick thing then, is that what's being lost with a film version or a TV show version? Is that why, like, I guess with a lot of video games, for example, when you try to make a video game into a movie, you're losing that direct access and input. Like, at least with the podcast, there's almost like an illusion of you're hanging with your buddies that are doing this, even if you're not an active participant.
Yes, and the central sauce of any of these shows is that they're making it up as they go, right? Usually, dear listener, if you're not familiar, in most of these games, the most popular ones, you'll have one person who kind of presents the world to the other players. They're the one who knows what's going on, and they're the dungeon master or the game master, and they'll describe situations to the other players. The other players each inhabit a character within this world. In Dungeons and Dragons, it'll be fantasy type characters, but there's loads of different games. You can play whatever type of character you want in whatever type of world you want, but that's kind of how it works. And then when you try to do something as that character, you'll end up rolling dice. So to figure out if you're successful or not, if you're attacking someone, you're climbing a wall, whatever, the dice determines that. So there's the aspect of randomness, there's the aspect of collaborative storytelling, and those two factors together make it so that you're participating almost, even if you're just listening, you're watching something come together live. It has the same sense as improv, and yes, that's why it's a problem if you're trying to turn that into a movie. There's no one Dungeons and Dragons story, which is why the Dungeons and Dragons movie Honor Amongst Thieves was actually quite good at pulling the feeling of what it's like to play D&D, of go on an adventure, capturing that's the challenge, and that's the benefit of these formats, that you're actually just coming along, you're sitting along at the table with your friends. And the most parasocial relationships I have are probably with people who do Dungeons and Dragons podcasts.
Did you ever listen to the Dungeon Run?
I am not familiar with the Dungeon Run.
It's just there's a film podcast guy that he always mentions, where he had a Dungeons and Dragons type podcast. I never heard it. The only other one I know of is when on Harmontown, Dan Harmon, they used to sometimes play D&D with Spencer and like their co-hosts and stuff. That's my only real experience around it.
Yeah, which is relatively early in the development. Like, there's been a real explosion in these types of podcasts in the last decade, and that was pretty early on, I would say, in that development. But what I've been watching this week, Jim, is a little something called Dimension 20 Fantasy High junior year. So that's a lot of subtitles, but basically I explained to you the other week about the streaming service Dropout, which is the development of College Humor, their sort of weird little show where they do weird little shows. And Fantasy High is or Dimension 20 is probably the most successful thing on their platform, and it is an actual play show. But the difference here being it's not just an audio podcast, it's a visual production, and it has a higher production value than a lot of other shows in this space. Even from the get-go, from the very first season, which was like 5 years ago at this stage, they had like elaborate little battle minis and sets. They have big screens up behind the players and great, pretty engaging editing. And as the show has gone on, they've just upped the ante on this sort of production value. Now, I will say from the start of it, when I was watching the first season, I liked it, but I wasn't really fully sold. It felt it had some of the improv aspects, but it also was bogged down a little bit by trying to do all this high production value stuff. But I think it eventually now, after a few years, they've really fucking nailed it. Like it's such a big production. It's such an expensive show to make. And this is now the third season of their Fantasy High show. But they've done hundreds and hundreds of hours of this show. They've had different players come in for different seasons and things like this. And this is the third season featuring the characters of the very first show that they did. It's been massively successful. It's been releasing weekly since like January or whatever with 20 episodes. And it's good. It's good, Jim, I guess is what I'm getting at.
So when they do something like this, do they ever have like a finale, or do they just keep going?
Yeah, so they for this one in particular, there's still like that slight rigidity of the format. So in the first season, they would switch. One episode we like story based, a lot of improv and stuff, and developing kind of a mystery. They're trying to figure out what's happening in this little town. It's called Fantasy High because it's basically like, what if John Hughes directed a Dungeons and Dragons story? So it's like modern conveniences and appliances and things, but in the world of swords and sorcery. And, there's a mystery about what's happening at this magic school for adventurers, and they're trying to figure that out. And by the end of that year, it's like one school year, they defeat a big bad, they go off for the summer, and then they're back next year doing a new adventure. So that's kind of been the format. And we've made our way to junior year now from freshman year, since it's the third season.
Sounds like a blank meets blank show to me. I feel like something that we threw out there and they ripped off, probably.
Probably should check out Blank Meets Blank on your podcatcher of choice. But it does, right? It sounds like something we'd come up with. But they've had lots of interesting different concepts for different shows as well. But I think the interesting thing about it is they're actually able to balance all of those aspects well. If you were asking me, like, is Critical Role, the show they're making, is that TV? I don't know. They're kind of just streaming them playing the game. Maybe they'll cut between angles, but basically it's like, here's the 6 players and the DM, versus in Dimension 20, if you're asking me if this is a TV show, I feel like it would be dishonest of me to say, no, it's not a TV show, because they have a massive production value. They've got elaborate, like little battle sets. Now, all of the players are consistently just sitting at a table, and there's like graphics, there's like drawings and images that come in, but it's so well put together, and it's visually engaging enough that you would sit down and watch it. And I've sat down and watched it for many, many hours. So because all of these other shows, right, the podcasts I was talking about, they're podcasts, so you could just have them on while you're doing other things. But this, I've actually sat down this past year, me and my partner have watched like hundreds of hours of this show. This season was like 44 hours in total, right? And I think in total, adding up all the other different shows I've watched of just Dimension 20, it's like 240 hours. In comparison, Game of Thrones, that's like 70 hours of the whole show. Breaking Bad is like 60 hours. Now, you're not going to be impressed because the challenge, I did look this up, is about 400 hours. So it's kind of like I've almost spent as much. I've spent a bit more than half of the challenge I've spent just watching this show in the last year, to give you a sense of scale, Jim.
All right, I'll take it. Yeah, fair enough. Well, because that was going to be my question. Is this actually a TV show? Because I wouldn't constitute a lot of the other ones you mentioned that like stream on Twitch or just have like a YouTube channel or whatever, quite a TV show. Although since there is like an ongoing narrative, it's like getting there. But this sounds like it kind of adds in the extra variables required to kind of to meet those credentials.
Yes, I would agree. And so the third season of this has now wrapped up. There's been a big finale. We're all waiting to see what the next big Dimension 20 show is. But the positive thing about it is that they can actually knock out a season, relatively quickly and then release it over time. So there's just a lot of this stuff because obviously you couldn't script a thing like this, like making probably the amount of time and effort that goes into making this, you wouldn't even get 8 episodes of a Dungeons and Dragons show. But here's 20 episodes and they're all like 2 or 3 hours each, and it's engaging. You're using your imagination. You're not just placidly consuming something. And you know what? If any of this sounds vaguely interesting, I highly recommend it. First few seasons of this show are actually available on YouTube, but I mentioned all the other ones as well: the Adventure Zone, NADPod, Dungeons and Daddies. These are all great shows.
Dungeons and Daddies. What's the name of this one again?
So it's Dimension 20 is
Dimension
the
20.
show, and this particular season is fantasy high, but really any Dimension 20 show is pretty good.
What were the other seasons?
Well, they've had Dungeons and Drag Queens, where they had drag queens come in and play Dungeons and Dragons for the first time. That was pretty fun. Mm-hmm. They had A Crown of Candy was a favorite of mine, which is a story. Actually, a lot of these feel like blank meets blank now that you mentioned it. But A Crown of Candy was basically Game of Thrones set in Candyland. So all the characters are different types of food. The different kingdoms are different food types. And they're kind of... Yeah, but it's like serious political intrigue. People's throats are getting slit. It's brutal. That was a pretty fun one. There's Never After, which is another season where they're trapped in sort of they're storybook characters like Pinocchio or whatever, but they're kind of trapped in a dark story world where everything's like the stories are unraveling and coming apart, and they're sort of bouncing between universes trying to escape. A lot of interesting stuff happening in the stories, which is really why it's worth watching.
No, it sounds good. I mean, again, even from an outsider's perspective, I'd have to see how the presentation is to see if I could be able to sink that much time into it, but it does sound intriguing to me.
Well, good. But yeah, I think maybe if you can't stomach one of these, check out one of the podcasts mentioned. But regardless, I've talked for a while now, and probably we should chat about something other than Dungeons and Dragons for a few minutes. So, Jim, I have a question for you.
What TV shows have you been watching? Tell me, I gotta know.
Well, Jacob, I might have a secret because I've been watching Pretty Little Liars: Original Sin, which is I've never seen the show Pretty Little Liars. I'm not sure if you're familiar, but there was like a CW like teen show, Pretty Little Liars, from like the early aughts or mid 2000s, something or other. But what they did, which piqued my interest, is they relaunched it in 2022 as a slasher show. And I swear I watch other shows besides horror shows, but it feels like I'm always watching horror shows. But they relaunched it on HBO Max or Max, the one to watch for HBO, as Pretty Little Liars: Original Sin, which was like like it turned it into a gory slasher where people get stabbed and killed.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So what was it originally? Because I definitely heard about it, and I swear there's other shows that I mix up with Pretty Little Liars, because it's like anything with 3 words in the title, I just think of Pretty Little Liars, even though I've never seen it. But was that kind of like a teen drama, kind of a Gossip Girl show originally, or was there murders from the get-go?
Couldn't tell you. Don't know a thing about it, honestly.
Okay, great.
Because, you're right. I think I always mix it up with Gossip Girl. I think there was something... Oh, you know what? That might have been on, like... I think Pretty Little Liars was on, like, ABC Family, or at least here or something. I do think it had something to do with deaths and, like, who... It was a secret, who did this, and, like, I don't know. I've never watched it.
It was on the network Freeform, which was owned by ABC Family, I guess.
Yeah, I think it was ABC Family, and then people are like, why is this on ABC Family? And they're like, it's our biggest show. We'll change the name of our network to Freeform. But yeah, the beauty of me is I don't know anything about the original show. I watched the slasher version, Pretty Little Liars Original Sin. And part of what I want to talk about in the lead up to this is because, you know, we watched the first season in 2022 when it aired or whatever. And then this season's been on for a couple weeks now, but I hadn't watched it until the other night. But you know how that goes when it's been like 2 years since a show and you're like, oh shit, I got to refresh. Like they give you a recap at the beginning, like they give you a 2-minute thing, but I'm like, oh yeah, I kind of remember that character. What was that? So what do? I turn to YouTube, right? Because clearly there are channels out there that must have recap videos, and there are, but they're all AI bullshit now, and they fucking suck. And we were talking a little bit about, before we started recording, about how, like, trying to read through an article for something and you realize it's AI and it kind of turns into gibberish. For as impressive AI can be with, like, music or trying to get a piece of clip art or something, like, that's kind of cool. But once you see what it's doing to our search optimization and these YouTube videos, it's horrible. It's indecipherable. It makes no sense. It's an AI voice reading an AI script that barely makes any sense at all. It was a goddamn chore to try to remember what happened in season 1 of this show to get ready for season 2, I tell you. AI is destroying us.
Oh, yeah. I mean, there was a video popped up recommended for me on YouTube that was like, here's a tutorial. Here's how I managed to make fucking 100,000 TikToks using AI. And I'm like, don't brag about that. If you have to do it to pay the bills or whatever, I guess I will. I mean, I will hate on you, but like, don't brag about that. That's not a good thing. When I'm trying to read news articles about what's happening in the world of TV, I mean, a lot of the content online, and I say that word very intentionally, a lot of the content is just like generated to fill a gap, right? Like Google has created an ecosystem where you're incentivized to do certain things, and those things are not always going to be make good stuff that people are interested in. It's like search engine optimization. It's like here's you have to have an article that's like, when is this fucking show coming out? And then you have to scroll all the way past all this bullshit. And at least someone had to type that bullshit out a few years ago. Now, not the case, because I'll go down and I'm like, I know for a fact no human has written this, and I'm here reading it like a fucking chump, and it makes me want to give up on the internet in total. So yeah, I agree, Jim.
Well, and the best thing about that video of how I made like 100,000 TikToks with AI is he's not making money off of those TikToks. He's making money off of that video that is selling the idea of your get rich quick. That's the best thing about it.
No, the course of how to do that is what you actually make money off.
Exactly.
Fucking idiots just trying to make a quick buck instead of actually engaging any creative bone in your body. But, you know, whatever. Fuck it anyways.
So, anyways, Pretty Little Liars Original Sin, like the first season, it follows, it's like 6 girls, but like it cuts back and forth between their parents were, you know, in high school in 1999, and a suicide happens on New Year's Eve, and it's like this girl that they all ignored and pretended didn't exist, and because of that, she ended up committing suicide. So, you know, it starts to get in like the sins of the mother are now being played out on the daughters here in 2022, and they're dealing with a slasher murderer that's showing up and like, you know, stabbing people to death, tossing them off ledges, like all my favorite stuff. And the new season picks up basically right where the last one left off, because all the secrets were revealed in the finale. We found out who A was. I think that's also a thing that was in the original show. There are little references, like this show is going to make me go back and watch the other stupid show, even though I have no interest in it, because my fiance Stella is always like, well, let me just tell you about the show. And I'm like, no, don't tell me, because I might watch it. Because she's even told me too, like, let me tell you who Gossip Girl is. And I'm like, no, don't tell me, because one day I might watch Gossip Girl, even though I probably won't. But I don't want it spoiled for me, Jacob, because who knows?
That's why I didn't tell you who Lady Whistledown is in Bridgerton, because Lady Whistledown is Gossip Girl, because Bridgerton is Gossip Girl meets Regency Romance. And I didn't say shit, even though season 3's out now, and I really want to talk about it. But yeah, go on.
Yeah, that's how I am. I don't know how you categorize that, but a show I have no interest in for the most part, I'm like, don't spoil that for me, because you never know. One day I might want to watch it. But because I know the original Sin show that takes place in a place called Millwood, and this is like a different town from the original show, but they reference the other town sometimes. And it also is one of the showrunners from the Sabrina show, and I think he worked on that Dark Archie show. So I think that's
Riverdale.
Yeah, Riverdale.
I was thinking all of this has kind of Riverdale vibes. Yeah.
I think that's why, this guy brought the slasher vibes to the show. Like, I think that's his whole thing is like, let's take even Pretty Little Liars, which I think originally was kind of dark, and he's like, let's make it even darker. Let's just make it a slasher show. Now they can swear. One of the annoying things about this show, though, is one of the characters is she works at a movie theater, and she loves film. And so she talks in film geek or whatever.
Right.
Which
And how does that land with you these days?
It used to be charming. I've mentioned this so many times. Like, you go back to like Randy from the original Scream. Not the first version of this character, but obviously one of the most famous, or even like Clerks, Clerks, where it's just like nerds talking about movies in a movie. But like Randy, especially for horror, that ties in together here. These characters used to be nerds. My biggest problem now is these characters still exist, but now they're the coolest motherfuckers ever. And I think that's stupid. I think they should still be nerds, and kind of everyone thinks they suck. But then again, I guess nerds are cool now, so it does make a little sense. But it'll be things like they're watching a, security footage, or no, they have a website that they're getting tips from called Spooky Spaghetti.
Oh yeah, cool.
Like creepypasta, Jacob.
Right.
And something like ties into like what's really going on, and she'll say something like, "This is actually a line from the show." To quote Jordan Peele, "Nope."
Oh wow. All characters that do that just need to be incels and just kind of also be into like QAnon. That's how the wheel turns. Nerds have to be not cool again. The wheel has to turn. They're realistically, all those people in real life are really into Q and Trump now. So make that part of the plot as well, please.
Yes. And in the first season, for her film studies class, she did a gender-bent remake of the Psycho shower scene to have a woman, like a woman in drag kill a guy in a shower to like take the power back, and they discuss like the, the phallus of a knife in the slasher genre. Like they try to do that type of shit. It's like film Twitter garbage, and like I hate it so much, but also I just love it because I'm like, what the fuck is this? And at one point, since now it's in the summertime, and they're all talking about what's your favorite summer movie, and one of the girls it's supposed to be a sophomore in high school going into junior year. Yeah. Her favorite summer movie is Wet Hot American Summer, and I'm like, there's no fucking way. There's a high school girl out there whose favorite summer movie is Wet Hot American Summer. But god damn it, if the kills at the end of each episode don't keep me going, Jacob. I've watched 2 so far, and they both have been kind of slogs to get through, and then they have a cool kill at the end, and I'm like, let's go. Give me the next episode.
Well, yeah, what they should have said is like, no, don't tell me what happens in Wet Hot American Summer. I've only seen the TV show, and I might go back and watch the movie. That would have been good. Yeah, Riverdale actually is on our YouTube channel as well as our website, us reviewing the very first episodes of Riverdale. We knew from the start that ship was going weird places, and we were right. And I think I actually went on and did like some little video reviews of episodes after we stopped watching it together. But yeah, finding out that person was also involved in this does not give me confidence, but I'm glad to see you're enjoying the kills, Jim.
I don't think it's the showrunner of Riverdale, but he worked on Riverdale, and then he was the showrunner for Sabrina.
Yes.
Yeah, Roberto Aguirre Sacasa. And he actually may have worked on the Chilling Adventures of Sabrina comic book as well. So he does bring a little bit of, like, like more of a pedigree, I would imagine. But it's also, some of it's so cringe. Like they work in a movie theater. They're always talking about movies in the worst way.
But we would also do that, Jim.
Yeah, I would put that in. I'd put that in my script. So
yeah.
We're going on long. So yeah, that's just another horror show that I've been watching. Do you want to still try to? Let's just do a fast five before we're done.
Hey,
and then
it's
wrap
fast.
It up.
That's it. We were talking the last few episodes. We've been talking every time. We're like, we have to do the rapid fiver top five. We always mix up the name, but yeah, obviously, rapid five or top five, if you're not familiar, is the bit where we come up with a top 5 list very, very quickly. Because the problem is, I can't decide. I take too much time. If someone asks me what's my favorite movie, I don't know, man. That's why I have to be under pressure to decide. So we basically spin a wheel, pick a random television-related topic, and we make a top 5 in 30 seconds. We have to come up with our lists. Yeah. And if we can't pick it, the other person gets to pick what goes on our list.
I haven't even heard this yet, but what? Oh, did I mess it up?
I mean, it's probably better that it cuts off there. It goes on for a while, but yeah. Play it again. Let's hear it.
Hey, hold on.
That's
Let
the
me
pop
play it
punk
from the
version.
file. Yeah,
let's
messed
see what
up
it
on
is.
my thing. Hold on.
That's all right. We're experimenting. We're still figuring this out.
No, maybe my file is bad.
Oh, well. We did a rant about AI, and now no more AI jingles. They turned the tap off. OpenAI is there like, fuck you.
Yeah, because even if I try to just play it, it's not. All right, whatever. You get it. It's a fast fiver.
Yeah. You get it. You're an hour into the episode. You're committed.
Yeah,
you can't back out now.
Well, I'm trying it one more time. Let me see if this works now.
All right. It's not good.
No. All right. We'll put a pin in that. We'll be back.
But you know how our what TV shows have you been watching? It just cuts off. That's like the extreme version of that. Yeah. It's only like the first drum hit, and then because it's a fast fiver, we don't have time for that shit. The song's actually like a minute long, so fuck it. Let's just do it.
All right. Yeah. Okay. Let me pull up the wheel here.
Yeah. Here we go.
Let's see what we got. Ooh.
Okay.
All right.
The
Top
jingle,
5.
That's so fucking long. But yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Top 5 crime dramas. That's what it was, right?
Yes, crime dramas.
Right.
Okay.
There we go.
Fuck.
That's it.
There's no way. I have fucking nothing.
Yeah, I couldn't really think of a lot. I couldn't think of any.
Oh my god. That went so poorly for me. I'm not touching the list, but I couldn't
pens
think of
down.
any.
I got my list is written down right here.
Yeah.
I do love how fucking tense that music is because it really gets me all fucking going.
Yeah.
Do we just read
I only
off our
have
list,
two. I don't know. I only have
forth?
2 of them, so I don't know what to do here.
Well, my 5, because I couldn't think of anything, I just put Law and Order. I've never even really watched Law and Order.
Okay.
So I was like, that's, I guess, a crime show.
Okay.
I put number 4, I put Oz. Have you ever seen Oz?
I've never seen Oz. I always have. It's not related to the wizard, right? At all.
No. I mean, well, the whole thing, it's a great show. It's like, maybe not HBO's first show, but it's one of their first like televised dramas. I think it was like a year or 2 or a couple of years before The Sopranos. Edie Falco, who plays Carmela, is a prison guard on it. But yes, it takes place in this test prison facility called Emerald City. That it's like Oswald State Penitentiary. Yeah. And there's a narrator who's Michael from Lost, and it's just what goes on, the ins and outs of a male prison. Prison rape, people getting shanked and killed, people falling in love, etc.
Okay.
Number 3, I had The Wire. Did you even think of The Wire? The Wire counts, right?
This is the problem. The Wire is one of my only 2 ones. I put The Wire at number 1, and then it's 2, 3, and 4 are blank, and then I have number 5. So The Wire is number 1. But I realized after the fact, like my top 5 in total that we did in episode 1, like Breaking Bad, is that a crime drama? The Sopranos, is that The Sopranos? Is that a crime drama? For some reason, I also thought of The Wire, but I didn't think of Breaking Bad or The Sopranos. So
yeah, that's what we should then. What constitutes a crime TV show? I think Sopranos. Yeah, that it's got to be.
The Sopranos definitely. Breaking Bad probably as well. So those would probably be somewhere between 2 and 4 for me. But
I can't believe I didn't even think of Breaking Bad because I put Law and Order instead.
Okay, so let's go through because tell me yours again here. So where are we from the bottom? What's your list?
I got number 5, Law and Order.
Yeah.
Number 4, Oz. Number 3, The Wire. Number 2, The Shield. Number 1, Sopranos.
The Shield, you've tried to sell me on many a time, and you've lauded this show far and wide, and I still have not seen it. So more fool me.
If I knew how to make a PowerPoint, I was going to have one this episode, too, for that. But I'm going to figure it out. Maybe I'll spring that on you when you least expect it.
You'll be on TikTok or YouTube like, how do I make a PowerPoint? And then the AI voice starts talking at you like, fuck! Fuck it! Okay, so that's actually very respectable compared to my top 5. So my top 5 is, number 5 is Dexter.
All right, now that counts.
Number 4, 3, and 2 are blank, so you get to pick those ones, and then The Wire is number 1.
Oh yeah, I get to pick for you then.
Yeah, because I couldn't think of. You can put The Shield on there, I guess, or just really bad shows if you want me to be like a loser.
Well, yeah, put The Shield at number 2.
Cool.
Put Reacher at number 3 because I'm googling crime shows and Reacher's coming up.
I googled crime shows as well because I was fucking trying to think of what are even crime shows. Like 30 seconds is not a long time.
Yeah, it goes quick. I'm surprised I didn't think. Well, not that True Detective's really only good for 1 season, and even then, it's not good all the way through. But I guess that comes up. Or Mindhunters, I've never watched. Did you watch Mindhunters?
I never watched Mindhunters. I'm sure there's lots of other ones that I did watch and enjoy that I'm still not thinking of, but. No, not that one. Do you want to pick a bad one for me or a good one? Is Brooklyn Nine-Nine doesn't count. That's not a drama.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it even specified drama, did it?
It did say drama. Yeah.
Okay, it did say drama. Okay.
Yeah.
I've never seen it, so put where I just saw it on the list. Put White Collar on there.
Okay. I mean, it kind of goes with Dexter, which is right after it. So my top 5 now is The Wire, The Shield, Reacher, White Collar, and Dexter, and I've seen 2 of those shows. So now we know how the segment works when no one when I can't actually do the list. It's kind of fun.
Yeah. What did we miss, guys? What is your? I mean, some people, when I Google it, The Boys comes up. I don't know if that's necessarily a crime show.
No way. I would say probably Fargo. I would put Fargo.
Oh, yeah.
Maybe. But I also haven't watched every season of that. But I like the ones I've seen enough,
Yeah. I only really watched the first 2, and then we watched like the first episode of season 3 and reviewed it, and I never watched it again. Even though I liked it. It's not like I disliked it or anything.
What about Narcos, everyone? Have you watched Narcos?
I haven't. I've heard it's good.
That seems like something someone would get upset about in the YouTube comments. Please feel free to get upset at youtube.com/showswhatyouknow.
Oh, You's a crime show. I like You.
I never watched You.
Monk, never watched it. Blacklist, never watched it. NCIS, never watched it. Anyways, what did we miss? What are our blind spots? Fill us in. What's your fast 5? Don't cheat either. Give only 30 seconds. Don't sit down and make a list.
Yeah, don't think about it. Then you're
do
cheating.
It on the honor. We're doing it on the honor system.
Yeah, put it in our comments on YouTube. YouTube.com/showswhatyouknow. You can also email us. I know you won't, but you can email us at showswhatyouknowshow@gmail.com if you want to go old school, old media on us. And we'll, you know what? If first person to send us their top 5, their rapid 5 or top 5, we will read out next time. So do send it in.
Yeah, no one will, but.
Yeah, I know. They might. But that's. I think that's it for this week. I mean, I want to keep talking TV, but you know what? We're gonna have to wait until next week when the Acolyte comes out. See what we make of it.
Absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for listening. Shows what you know. show@gmail.com. Find us on TikTok. Find us. Like and subscribe on YouTube. See you, everybody.
Yeah. Peace. We our show's what you know. We'll always watch TV, and if you think we can't, we'll watch more and you'll see. That's why the people of the web believe in Jim from Las Vegas and Jakob from Sweden.